So Tahira
Hey, there we go.
has just asked the question of Brandt. What is he seeing right now that he wants to add to his events? Or someone's events.
Well, that's always a tricky thing because I love looking at the new technology, but to be honest, the vast majority of my clients still are financial and medical, and that's a very slow-moving portion of the industry. But I still continue to be very bullish on projection. I really think that is still an underused technology in our industry, and it doesn't have to be super expensive. That's actually, I'm going to be speaking at the CMP Conclave put on by CIC, and that's what I'm going to be speaking on there, is on projection and how to do it on a dime. It's one of those things that I think if you put a little creativity in it, and you might have to spend some more on content, you can really blow people away with what is technically a very not terribly expensive piece of gear. So I still like a projection. I'm starting to warm up to drones a little bit. I've been a bit bearish on drones, but the FAA just came out with their latest regulations. That's a stack about that thick, but it seems fairly common sense. It doesn't seem terribly over regulatory from what I've read so far. And there's some really beautiful things being done with drones in Europe, using them more as decor pieces and like floating artistic pieces, as opposed to, buzzing around and getting photos. That's, as far as I'm concerned, that's the least interesting use of drones, is using it as an aerial camera. And then I'm fascinated by where Disney's going to go with their drone patents. They've got basically drones using drones for giant marionettes. So pulling the strings using computer-controlled drones for like giant 100-foot tall marionettes, as well as using them as pixels in a flying display. So each individual micro drone, about that big, has a red, green, blue light on it, and you could coordinate them to become an image of pixels, and then they fly away and zoom together. So there's a lot of things that are coming down the way. VR is still interesting to me. I'm starting to. That's another thing that I've been very skeptical of, that I'm starting to warm up to, is can VR be an experience for groups? And the answer is surprisingly yes. And I'm still very bullish on AR. I think AR has a lot of potential, and I can't wait to get my glasses that I can just look down and I can, see the information about people that I'm talking to, because I'm terrible at names. And I would just love the ability to see, yep, that person's in my contact list. I met them 3 years ago at WEC, and their name is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how are your kids? Yes.
And how are the kids?
Yes, right. That's all. That all comes up on the glasses as well.
Yes. Oh, exactly. Right. Yeah, it's like, yes. Oh, and they're still playing baseball. Yeah. So yeah, Sean, the majority, isn't it? It's interesting how people kind of find niches in different portions of our industry. I was actually talking to a tech company today, and they provide social media wall services, and I was talking about how there's these little niches. That's what I love about our industry. It's such a broad, all-encompassing industry, because everybody does meetings. And so, it doesn't matter whether you're an association and what your association's for. There's so much variety out there. And then yet we wind up kind of getting ourselves pigeonholed into various niches. And it just happens that, the companies that I've worked for tend to go with financial and medical, but there's no particular reason or specialty that I have in that. Let's see, what else is coming up in the chat? Drone displays. Yep. VR. Yeah. Okay, so here you guys are looking to possibly use VR at their next VC Tech Summit. Yeah, I think that would be. So I saw an interesting thing. I was really fortunate to be able to go to the Eventex conference in Sofia, Bulgaria earlier this year, and that was really fun. I really enjoy the perspective that comes with going to international events. And so I got exposed to some events that had happened that I didn't hear anything about, obviously, because they were happening in Russia or Eastern Europe. And I saw a phenomenal installation for, I think it was Lexus, cars using VR. And so, but it was still the group experience. And that's what I was talking about, where you come in and everybody sits down almost like you're in a theater in these kind of comfy egg chairs. And, you know, then they all, you know, you go, okay, it's time, and, you know, put on the goggles all together. And what was amazing was to watch the video, because the people were close enough to each other that they were reaching over and grabbing each other's hands. And, you know, as they swooped and swirled and, you know, went all around the car and through the car and saw the car, and it was music and the whole nine. And it was simultaneous. So it was like a 50 or so people watching simultaneous VR. I don't even want to know what the horsepower that was needed to pull that off behind it. I think it was the Samsung VR headsets that they were using. And then when they were done, and there was smoke and mist, I mean, so it was like, it was a full, you know, multi-dimensional universe. And then they take off the goggles and the car has appeared. So when they came into the room, the car wasn't there. While they're in the VR experience, then the car appears, you know, while they're in it, and then they take off their goggles and there's the car. Now you can go up and look at the car in reality. And so that kind of playfulness of mixing virtual reality with the in-room events, I think that's where the potential is for group VR experiences.
So just so that I'm clear about that, so everyone had the same virtual reality environment, but they could, if they move their head around, they would see a different. They would see a different. 50 individually controllable VR experiences of the same movie, basically. So yeah, you're going through a movie, but you're fully able to look in all 360 directions. It looked really cool, and just like the event itself looked cool. Like the you know, slick seeing, and, you know, I mean, just the whole 9 yards looked really nice. And what about, when you were doing that, did you experience the, you know, the nausea stuff that people have, you know, still complain about in VR sometimes? Did it feel uncomfortable at times, or are they starting to deal with that kind of issue?
Well, to be clear, I didn't get to do the experience. That was actually, it was one of the nominees for the awards, but I got exposed to, you know, seeing the video of it, and, you know, I hadn't heard anything about that event.
Right.
And I wouldn't have, just because it's on the other side of the world. And that's what I really also love about our industry, is how, you know, diverse it is across the globe, and how you're able to get some perspective by getting out of your little world and seeing the rest of the world.
You guys may have heard about this, but so someone was telling me, I think at an event last year, that in Europe they are using, or they certainly have the facilities for using 3D holograms of presenters. So you have this technology where, you know, the presenter can be, you know, 1,000 miles away, and some kind of scanning process, and you get a very realistic 3D projection of the presenter, you know, in the place where the actual live audience is. And I've never seen that. I don't know if have you seen that in the United States? Again, you guys probably go to more events than I have. So
not in person, but I've seen video of it, and heard it can be quite compelling. And there's a company whose name I can never remember and always have to look up, because it's one of these, you know, Web 3.0 names that doesn't make any sense. But they're really specializing in really small installations of that, where literally it's the size of the area right behind the podium. So you can have other live things going on, and then have just this small area that's portable, that you can use for the holographic effect. And what I've seen done with that is where you can have a CEO interview himself. You know, the only person qualified to interview me is me. To paraphrase a joke on Donald Trump. So I've seen that done, where, you know, the CEO comes out and interviews his future self, or in some other way, interviewing himself. So I think that's very interesting. That's another technology that's coming down in price very quickly, because essentially it's projection technology. And projection technology has come down in price significantly as well. And as I mentioned, I'm very bullish on projection technology. So all part and parcel of the same package of the new frontier of display technology.
So yeah, just speaking about projection, and also people may be wondering where Christopher DeArmond is he is late. He's finishing off things with a client right now, but I know that he and he actually does this a lot. He's been working a lot with the LED wall projection, this new technology where you get rid of projectors and you have these basically these screens with I don't know, thousands of LEDs on them, and I know he has one of those and has been using it quite a lot and is pretty gung ho about that. Have you done anything with that yet, Brandt? Or
yeah, it's not directly with those guys, but yeah, other vendors, and that's another area where it's amazing how in such a short amount of time, they're talking about the distances between these LED pixels, and it's 9 millimeter to 7 millimeter to 5 millimeter. I mean, they're just getting smaller and smaller, which in essence is increasing the resolution of these screens. And I'm seeing them used very effectively as basically decor items. So if you think about a stage set, rather than having, say, 3D stretch sculptures or something like that you would have on the screen or on the stage, and then you lighted them up, you can use these 3D walls, break them up into smaller bits, and use them as decor items, kind of around the back of the stage, and then design content to fit those that's going to be very, moving slowly or changing color from speaker to speaker. It again falls kind of in a similar line of projection mapping, where you're able to paint with light and really change the mood on a dime in your event or in your meeting to take advantage of these new display technologies.
That's cool. Sean is asking about SwarmWorks.
I don't know SwarmWorks by name. What is it that they do? As I mentioned, I'm terrible with names, so that goes for companies as well.
Well, we'll find out. We can always go to the Google. The paddle Q&A. The paddle Q&A. Doesn't ring a bell for me.
That is starting to ring a bell. It's some kind of a physical device that they're using. Yeah, you get it. Yes. Yeah, it's able to then do polling and things like that on the fly using these.
Like, hold up.
Yeah, things.
Yeah,
and it very quickly counts and adds and changes and can figure out. I think it even can figure out how high you're holding it. So if you feel really strongly about something, I think I could be making that up. That might be a different technology. That's one of the wonderful things. There's so many different types of technology out there.
Well, Sean, I'm typically a very low tech person, but there have been there's a very low tech kind of equivalent of that. Certainly less fancy. But it's been around for years, and actually some people I know some associations, some organizations, programmers and kind of techies kind of like this, which is called card voting, and you give people colored cards, the same kind of thing. And sure, you can use the colors for different things. You can say, including, let's say you have a complicated discussion, you can have people vote on whether they want to keep, and it goes into some byway. You can have a card color that means, yeah, I want to keep talking about this for a while, or no, let's go back to what we were actually talking about. You have a convention about what the colored cards mean that everyone understands, and you can do some pretty complicated things, and it's a way for several hundred people to actually kind of have some control over a free-ranging discussion on a topic of general interest. I have a description of that in my latest book. And it's a kind of nerdy kind of approach, but in some ways probably not, and much less flashier than the paddle approach, but essentially the same kind of idea without any high tech.
I think that's going to be a fun thing to watch, is again this interplay between technology and more old school, physical, real things, for lack of a better word. As we talk about things like motion control gloves and wearables and rings that can control things. If you think about it, that's kind of an interesting direction to go when we start talking about polling. Is we could do a show of hands, but because everybody is wearing a smart ring, it instantly counts it without having to open phones and tap on things and all that kind of stuff. And so the paddle idea is interesting from that standpoint of as things progress, a lot of this stuff, and I'm not saying this about Swarmworks or the paddle or anything like that, but a lot of this stuff feels like it's kind of a stopgap. Until we get that time where we're all wearing, magic rings and things like that, right. Where apps really could just disappear because it's all being run through our glasses and, through our whatever devices. And, we can control our computer with our hands. And there's more than a few people that are predicting the demise of the app within the next 10 years, which seems fascinating that a entire genre of technology would come into fashion and then out, as much as we have, applauded the app economy, that it'll just be gone in another 5 to 10 years.
Well, isn't the central issue that you have to have, for all these things to work, everybody has to have access to the same technology, whatever it is, whether it's a hand or a ring, or a card or a paddle, with these, or an app and so on. And the problem is these days that that it's, unless you hand things out at the event, unless you go to that Lexus event and give everybody that Samsung VR headset, then people aren't going to be able to join in. And unless it's a relatively inexpensive tech, that gets to be expensive, and difficult and potentially cumbersome. And then there's, a learning factor and so on. How easy is it? So I think don't you think we're all kind of looking for these kind of ubiquitous technology that everyone has, or that we can give to people at an event, and then we can use it in a certain way.
And ubiquitous Wi-Fi, having internet access, equivalent internet access for all. I mean, it's right. It's, if I remember correctly, I think there's actually a clause about internet access in the EU constitution, like that. Yeah,
really?
That I remember somebody pointing that out. I don't know. Now I got to know. Hold on, but I'm pretty sure it basically says that internet access is a fundamental human right.
Really?
Let's see here.
But that doesn't mean that every event,
right? But at least we're talking about it in that context.
Sure.
Let's see here.
And we all know that not all Wi-Fi is created equal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now I wish I could find that.
That's right. I mean you're hoping. So much of this technology, I mean, it's actually very interesting, because there is this battle between what's going to be the ubiquitous thing, and we're in sort of internet world these days, but it's true that at events sometimes you don't have it. You should. Yeah. Oh, it's Laura. Okay, so Laura has joined us from Social Tables. I wasn't sure who it was, because the profile says Meredith, but okay, good guess. Very good. I'm impressed. I'm impressed, Sean, that you figured that out. So slowly but surely, folks are arriving. I just want to let people know that. Let's see. Well, let me just type it in rather than tell people. But if you have a question, Sean asked a question already about these paddle things. But if you have a question, just type /Q and type your question in, and then we'll get it, and I can bring it up. And also, if you're here, Brandt is holding the fort, but Christopher DeArmond should be here shortly. He's just been delayed working with a client. And he should be here hopefully fairly soon. So we'll see when he turns up. But let's see what else is going on. I mean, so the folks here questions. It looks like we're all it's all the converted here. We're folks who are already in the industry. I'm just thinking about things that Tahira asked you about trends, but what about mistakes? What about things that you're seeing? And feel free, all of you, to join in, because all of you go to events all the time, or produce events, or run events all the time. What kind of mistakes do you see commonly in production at events, or what kinds of things do you see people doing or not doing that you think they should be doing?
I think the biggest mistake continues to be, it probably has always been, and it continues to be, using technology for technology's sake. As much as I love these new, technologies, notice that I'm using very specific use cases of, using an LED wall for this, for the purposes of decor, or for the, if you decide to go down that road, then you have to think about what is going to be on that LED wall. What we're going to have to develop content for it. So you don't want to just get into LED walls just because you heard they're cool. You actually have to put some thought into that. And so one of the things that I say the most frequently is I would rather see old technology used well than new technology used for the sake of being new. So it's that continues to be the biggest mistake, is just I read in an article that I need to be I need to be doing this, so therefore I need to use it. And I think, unfortunately, in like the event app world, I think a lot of planners, unfortunately, did that. They said, oh, well, I need an app because every article that I'm reading tells me that I need to have an event app. So, and then they just launched into it without really thinking about why they need it. What is the purpose it's going to serve? How is it going to make my life easier? How is it going to make the attendees' life easier? How is it going to make, the back end, people working back at the association's life easier, marketing teams easier? What are we really going to get out of this technology? And to make it worth our while. I mean, I really hate the term ROI, but there's, maybe return on emotion is a better way of saying it. How is this going to make our lives better in any way, shape, or form? Now, that might come in the form of investment, or of revenue in some way, because we're getting data on our attendees. But really sitting down and deciding, why do I need this piece of technology, and what is it going to do for me before we jump in and go buy it. Regardless of whether it's an app or an AV or wiggly lights or, projection mapping, why are we doing it? Well, the answer might just be because we want a really beautiful stage set. And that's perfectly legitimate answer, as long as that's the reason. And that's why you're doing it. You're doing it as decor, or it's messaging, or, but so just have a reason for it. Don't just go diving in.
Yeah. Yeah, so Laura, you're kind of addressing Laura's question about how people decipher what's the best tech for them to use. You've been talking about that generally. She also asks you whether you think there's too much event tech out there. Are we kind of being swamped by all these options, and it's a little overwhelming, perhaps?
It certainly can feel that way, and I'm definitely getting that vibe. I think we're entering into a period where we might start to see a backlash from planners. I think there's a feeling that I'm getting out there of planners saying, not literally, but this is the feeling that I'm getting of, I didn't get into this industry so that I could figure out my flipping event app, or my PowerPoint's not working, or, something along those lines. They got into it because they want to, connect people and provide a good attendee experience and provide value to their sponsors and their stakeholders, and, and deal with, picking the perfect menu and the perfect venue and the perfect decor. They didn't get into it to deal with all this tech crap. And so to answer the question, I don't think there's too much technology out there, but there is an awful lot of it out there. And this is almost a direct quote from a planner. I have the capability of learning how to do all this. I don't want to learn how to do all this. She's like, I know I'm smart enough to figure all this out. I don't have the time, and I don't want to. You know, can I just hire somebody to handle it for me? And so that's definitely a feeling out there that there might be too much tech in that sense, that it's hard for any one individual planner to feel like they're effectively doing their due diligence and finding exactly the right technology for them. I will say, you know, along those lines, I always suggest not starting with the budget. So start with what you want and what you want to get out of it. Again, you know, what are your goals? What are you trying to get out of it? Why are you looking at bringing in this technology? And then go out and try and find a vendor, because it is such a wild west and there is so much technology out there. There are quality vendors at every price point. So you are likely to find what you want at the price that you need, you know, within reason. You know, obviously everybody would like everything to be free, but you know, there's the old saying of if the price is free, the product is you. So just be very careful when you're dealing with free services. So hopefully that answers some of those questions. No, I don't think there's too much technology out there, and the way that you find it is to start with the goals, start with what you want to get out of it, and then back your way into the technology rather than the other way around.
One of the issues surely is that, you know, what we consider technology is a moving target. I mean, you know, there was a time when, you know, slide projectors were, you know, really hot, you know. And so whatever we have, you know, that you see today, 5 years from now, if you go to events, you know, is like, well, this is common. You know, I mean, projection mapping isn't that old. You know, from my experience, and now it's like, well, most people seem to use it, and it's kind of, you know, fairly standard sort of kind of decor. And so, you know, the bar is always being changed. So it's the question of what people's expectations are. And of course, obviously, as you say, what certain kinds of events people have, they have an expectation that it's going to be at least, you know, at the kind of level of this kind of event should be when they went to something similar in the last year or two. So that kind of forces us to change and to incorporate stuff that used to be new as the standard. But we're also with the folks on this chat right now are the ones who I can see. There are a number of anonymous folks here, and who knows, you folks may have some questions here, and you may just be watching, and that's fine. But if you do have questions, feel free to, if you have a Twitter account and you log in and connect to this blab with Twitter, we'll know who you are, and then you can ask us questions. You can also email me if you like, if you want to stay anonymous and have some questions for Brandt and hopefully Christopher soon. My email is my name, Adrian@Segar.com. Just send me an email, and I'll pose your questions too, if you don't want to actually come on the chat, which is absolutely okay. So let's see, what else do we have to? I
can go get my 300-page slide deck, and we could just start talking.
That's right. We could start with slide one and go all the way through. But I don't know. I think the issue of what's appropriate, you know, is really a central issue. There's just so much. There is so much stuff out there, and I think, as you said, you provided really good advice. You have to think about what your needs are and what your wishes are first, and talk to those. And so let's talk about, you know, who we get our event production from. You know, who should we get it from? I mean, there are independents like you, Brandt, but you used to be heavily involved in a production company. That was an external production company. Then there are in-house production companies, and so on. So how should the folks who how should people decide what they want to do if someone wants to have a event at some venue and maybe they haven't run too many events before? What should they do?
Yeah, I mean, so for outside, internal, that's a very different beast. If you're a big enough company to have your own AV, your own in-house AV, that's one thing. But for the vast majority of associations and companies and organizations, obviously you're looking at some kind of outside company. There's basically 4 different kinds. One would be to use the in-house AV company for whatever venue you're at. The other would be some kind of third-party AV company. The third, I would say, would be a production company, which I think of as being kind of a different beast, though the lines between AV company and production company are blurring. Yeah.
Can you say more about that?
Yeah, and then just, real quick, the fourth one is to do it yourself, which means literally you're going and renting the gear and picking it up and setting it up yourself, which isn't really an option for most planners, but it's still an option out there. Yeah, so the difference between AV company and production company, as I say, the lines are blurring, and I think that's because traditionally an AV company was more of an order taker. So you would say, I'm having a meeting, this is what I want, and then they would show up with the gear and they would run the gear. And then the production company handles things more like calling the show, handling paperwork like schedules, show calls, show flows, managing the load in, load out. So I always kind of considered a production company to be more the like full meal deal, but not necessarily owning any gear. That was also kind of the big dividing line, is that a production company generally didn't own their own gear. They would then hire an AV company to handle, what they need. So it's, that kind of used to be the dividing line, but more and more AV companies are realizing that providing those services, those production services of, we'll provide someone to call your show, we'll handle the paperwork, we'll handle the scheduling, we'll deal with the venue, all of those more traditional production company services, the smart AV companies are doing more and more of that. So that's what I mean, that the lines, I think the main line still is whether or not you own the gear. The vast majority of true production companies don't own their own gear, and they will then subcontract AV companies to provide it. So some AV companies act as production companies, not all production companies act as AV companies. And then there's the in-house as well, and I think in-house gets a lot of knocks, sometimes legitimately so. It's everyone can tell a story of a bad experience they had with an in-house AV company. But if you really think about it, most everyone can also tell an experience, a bad experience they had with a regular AV company. So it depends on the venue, depends on the crew, depends on the gear, so many things. But the biggest thing is that people always come back to is cost. Why does the in-house AV company cost so much more than a third-party company? And the answer that I tend to give for that is the same reason that a candy bar down in the lobby of the hotel costs $8. Convenience. Yeah, sure. You can walk out the front door of the hotel. You can walk down the street. You can go to the 7-Eleven and you can buy that same candy bar for $1. Or, you know what? It is getting on towards bar time. I really want the candy bar now. I can just sign it to my room. It'll go on my master account. Nobody's going to see, nobody's going to know what it was. It'll just be $8 of something. And then I can have the candy bar now and go up to my room. And unfortunately, a lot of it's the same with meetings. It's convenient. So it's the convenient choice for your AV company at an event. And what's interesting to me is that it's usually the companies that can least afford it are the ones that are the most likely to use the in-house, more expensive AV company, because it is easier. So it's less man hours because it's a small team. Mm-hmm. They maybe only do one event a year, and their regular job is in marketing, or they're an admin assistant. It's just easy for them to use the in-house AV. And here is saying that, sadly, most of the in-house is mediocre, and the 18% service charge. I can tell you exactly what the 18% service charge is for. It's for the hotel. And then the other question that I get asked is, why does it vary so much from property to property? Why is it that I'm using, company brand X, AV company brand X here, and it costs this much, and then I use the same AV company because they're a national chain at a different location, and it's so much more expensive? And the answer to that is, and they'll tell you this, it's individually negotiated contracts. So even though it's the same chain, the same, P.S. it's an AV company, from location to location, they've negotiated individual contracts with those properties, and that can be enormously high in some contract, that because they want that in-house contract, for X number of years, sometimes those percentages can be 20 to 50% markup that are being required to give back to the hotels or to the venue. And so that's another reason why a lot of times the in-house AV can't bend on pricing. And so I hear this from a lot of planners as well. If they just have all the gear, it doesn't cost them any more, to bring this gear instead of that gear. Just give me the bigger mixer board at the price of the smaller mixer board. It doesn't cost you any more. Well, it does, because of those markups. So I mean, they're basically giving you it for half price already because of the 50% markup that's on there. So it's and you're paying for convenience. That's honestly what it boils down to, is you're paying for convenience. And to answer kind of that elephant in the room of why a lot of them might be more mediocre, I think the answer is simple. They exist there, and then you move on. So there's less incentive to take care of a customer when there's another one next, coming tomorrow. It's because they live there in house, and you'll be gone, but there'll be someone else new tomorrow. Less incentive. I really do think sometimes we over exaggerate how bad the in-house AV is, but the problem is everybody's got a horror story, so that those are the ones that tend to get spread around. I've had some great in-house AV crews that I've worked with, and I've had some bad ones.
Well, maybe the problem that you were talking about, while there'll be someone else tomorrow, there's a steady stream of business coming in, is that, and of course the venue doesn't necessarily see it that way. They want people coming back, but there's this sort of extra step in the chain. The venue says, yeah, we want these people to be happy, so they'll come back and use you again. But that's not the same people who are providing.
And that is a negotiation point, though, too, is because that commission is going to the venue, you can sometimes put pressure on their sales department before you sign the contract. That's the key. It's just like buying a car. You have to be willing to walk away. So, if they think you're not going to walk away, there's no incentive for them to do it. Now, here's what I get curious about. And Adrian, I don't know if you've heard this, but there is a certain individual from a high-profile hotel chain that's been on the speaking circuit at a lot of industry events, and he has been having a very open, honest conversation about pricing in hotels, including catering, food, rooms, room blocks, meetings, events, all of the ins and outs of pricing. And I really give him a lot of credit for having that conversation and having the guts to be, open, whatever metaphor you want to use. But the interesting thing is he's been saying that hotels, because there's a shortage of hotel rooms, hotels are starting to de-emphasize their meeting business and prioritize their transient business, their day-to-day rooms. So here's my question is, these AV companies that have negotiated these 20, 50% contracts, based on getting a certain amount of revenue every year, if hotels are starting to prioritize the transient business, they're not getting AV business, or at least as much, and it's a disincentive for the planners to use those hotels that are saying no. No, we don't have as much incentive to negotiate. So that's where I'm curious to see is if that's true, that hotels are starting to prioritize their transient business. How does that affect these AV contracts that are being negotiated at an incredible rate, at incredible percentages moving forward, some of which are, again, locked in for 2-3 years?
Well, I'm a little skeptical about, what those hotels have said, simply because, the stats I've seen is that the number of meetings continue to grow. So they must be being held somewhere. Whether they're being held less in hotels, that have in-house AV, I don't know. But if the number of meetings is increasing, then presumably the requirements for AV services are increasing for somebody. Who knows who they actually are? So we just got Sue Sue Pelletier has just joined us. Hi, Sue. I also don't want to miss a question to hear asked a way back. That's okay. No, it's you were
I can
responding
talk.
to other things.
I have been known to talk.
Yeah, it can't be all. But she asked about site inspection via VR, which I have never done, and I frankly would be pretty worried about, be skeptical about. But have you done that, Tahira? Brandt, do you know anything about that? Is that something that you think might be coming in the future, or Tahira's giving you
as well she should.
Pay attention.
Now, so wait, I'm a little confused. What's the question again? I'm still not paying attention, apparently.
Okay, so I'm scrolling back. She says, Tahira says, VR is now used for site inspections. Is VR site inspection good enough to make a decision? And feel free, any of the rest of you, to jump in here. Christopher still hasn't turned up. Richard, who had told me he was coming, has not made an appearance either. So I do have some, free. If you are, and I don't care if you're presentable. Look, I'm wearing this old T-shirt. So if you'd like to come on, just call in, and we can have you on, and you can talk too. Okay, yes. Yeah, so Laura's interested in knowing what tools there are for VR. So which I don't know anything about for VR site visits. So Tahira, have you seen any of these things?
I don't think it's good enough for the final decision, but I think it can help you start to narrow things down. I would love to be able to do that, even on some of the events where I know the space where the space has already been decided. Just for me as a tech person to go in and be able to take a 360 tour, I think it's way more compelling. Even my limited experience with the newer VR, including Google Cardboard, is a surprise, which by the way is a surprisingly compelling experience for being, $5 VR headset that you stuff your phone in. I think it's got a lot of potential for promotional materials. So at a trade show I was at, I think it was the Mexico booth. In addition to their glossy, catalog, they also were handing out a copy of a set of Google Cardboard that then you could just go and you could visit and get the 360 tour. Where I'm more excited again is in augmented reality. And also in Project Tango, Google's Project Tango, which is the souped up smartphone, of which they just released the first commercial version of it. I think Lenovo is the one that just released it. And that's the one that's got all of the sensors in it for room mapping. So it's got extra cameras, extra wide lens cameras, extra, I don't think it's laser, but I think it's infrared room mapping. And so literally you can walk into a room, wave your smartphone around, and you've got every measurement, a full 360 view that you can reconstruct and pop into a headset. That I think is going to be amazing on the technical side. So the VR is going to be great on the sales side and the promotional and marketing side, and then this augmented reality and space mapping that's coming from Project Tango, I think is going to be great for technical directors and for people who work in the industry or on the AV side, and being able to do that. Send one person instead of 5, for a site visit, reduce the carbon footprint, all of the things that we talk about wanting to do, have one less trip for a site visit by taking an AR view or a VR view instead of a regular in-person. Because, some of these corporate groups, I've seen planners, take 3 or 4 site visits to that location. If we can reduce one of those, for that meeting, again, we're reducing the carbon footprint, we're reducing travel and time and money. So another reason to be bullish on the VR front is that from a sales and marketing standpoint, and then the Google Tango stuff from the back end technical director standpoint.
I mean, I see what I see in terms of a site visit is using AR to reduce the number of people who need to come. So one person on the team goes on the site visit, and it can be a live AR feed. So you can walk around, and with a salesperson at the venue and look at rooms, and there are people, and you have basically a little video camera or your glasses picking up the video of what you're seeing and say, look, this would, Sue, this would be a great, don't you think this would be a great room, this is large enough, for the main session and so on. And Sue says, well, can I look around? And you look around, you could say, look, the stage can go here and so on. And Sue's seeing what you're seeing, and maybe the whole thing is being recorded. But multiple team members could be kibitzing on that and saying, well, no, could we look back at that other room you saw earlier, because maybe that would be better, and so on. And you're doing everything that it's almost as good for the whole team, but only one person actually had to make the trip.
That's another one of those technologies where the price has come down incredibly in the last couple of years. There are 360 cameras now for under $500. I think Rico has one, Rico, depending on how you say it. And it's under $500. It's not live, but you could easily just hold it out in front of you as the salesperson and say, hi Sue, I'm going to take you on a little trip around today. And first up, we're going to go through our main entrance and and just do a narrated tour just like that. I think would be a great, and think how inexpensive that is. It takes time, and it takes that initial investment in the not very expensive camera. We spend way more than that on color glossy, brochures and things like that for our venues. So being able to do that personalized 360 tour, I think would be a tremendous asset.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I mean, so that's a really, I think, a wonderful example of using tech to save time for everybody, to provide an experience that's almost as good. Elizabeth, welcome. Elizabeth Flowers here, and again, we welcome questions. Let's see. So and Laura asked about tools. So I guess we've kind of been talking about.
Well, that's what I was thinking about. That I saw
tools,
that, and I was thinking about that Rico camera. The cameras have come tremendously down. Now there's still really good really expensive ones too. They're like $30,000, but and fully editable and streaming and all that kind of stuff. But just the fact that there is one that's under $500 is blows my mind. And it's pretty compelling. It's not. It's not very grainy. It's pretty nice. There's actually some 3D stuff that was posted from the WEC conference, and I'm pretty sure that's what it was. It was one of those smaller Rico sticks or Rico. I still don't know. And because I saw the guy walking around with that, I jumped up on stage and took just a pano with my phone, and then I looked down and I see him with his. See, that's the thing, is you don't have to do the whole turnaroundy thing, because it's always capturing all the time.
But there are others. I mean, there are apps that have been around for a few years now, where you can walk into a room and very quickly measure the room, and even if it's strangely shaped and so on, so you can pull that data back. But again, I mean, I think a lot of site visits, I know I always bring my used to be camera, now just a smartphone, and you just do a quick movie of the whole room, and that's such a wonderful thing to do. 2 months later, and you're thinking, okay, time to get this show on the road, and what did that room look like? And you've got it. So sometimes, again, even that really simple technology can be helpful. Okay, yeah. So Tahir has asked a long question: how's a VR experience different from a 360 tour? What's the purpose? She says, it comes back to what is the purpose of your visit? Actually seeing a setup versus feeling what the space offers. And that's why you end up with 2 to 4 site inspections. It's certainly true that, I can certainly think of situations where you'd want to have more than one site inspection. But yeah, 4 seems.
That's what I mean. If you can just cut one, if you can just cut that down by one,
right,
it's going to save a tremendous amount of money and time. And yeah, maybe instead of 2, it's 1. Maybe instead of 3, it's 2. Maybe instead of 4, it's 3. So I definitely think. And I just saw a tweet that from Chris that he's asking if he's missed it. So.
Oh, no.
So let's maybe just shoot him an email quick and just see if he can, so he can still come in.
Yeah,
so I think, I think it's a, you know, the difference between the experience and a 360 tour is a fine line. I guess the VR, when I think VR experience, I think more of like what we were talking about before, where you sit down, you go in, you sit down, and you all do something at once, or versus a 360 tour, like I say, could be guided. It just wouldn't be live. It would be, you know, hey, how's it going? Let me show you this. Let me show you that. And that could be customized. But within that tour, you're still able to look at, you know, fully 360. I don't know if that answers the question or not, but that's what I've got.
Well, thinking about VR. So VR basically would mean that you basically create a complete VR environment of your real life conference space. And then you just provide, which is the 360, which is
right.
How different is that from a 360 tour? You're using VR to do the 360 tour. And I guess VR, I mean, maybe this is just a definitional thing. VR means that it's under your control. You know, instead of you're moving a mouse around, you're wearing goggles and so on, and you're turning around and you're doing something that allows you to move.
Yeah, I think we're probably just talking about different definitions. Where, you know, a 360 tour you could do on your computer and you can scroll with your mouse and that kind of thing. VR, I think, is definitely headset on. And then these things can be combined too, right? So maybe that first site visit is in VR, but then you go and you show up and you're there and you walk into the ballroom, and then you get handed a pair of AR goggles and you're able to look through, you know, think about something like HoloLens that's coming from Microsoft, and you're looking through and you're in that room, you're seeing that room, but then they can overlay what it will look like with a banquet setup, what it will look like with a meeting setup, what it will look like in a theater setup versus rounds versus chevrons versus, you know, be able to just click through and really show you what that room is going to look like as you stand there. And you can walk around in that room and see how it looks like, you know, from different angles.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be so cool. I mean, that's what we do now with, you know, floor. It's not that far off, right? Right. I mean, we have the technology, right? We do have the technology. Yes, right. That's right. The real number setup. So, you know, you say, okay, what would 200 chairs in, you know, straight row theater look like in this room?
And how often it's wrong.
It appears, and you say, oh, right, right. No, right. Could you put an aisle here? Yes, I can just see all the. That would be fun. That would be fun. You know, right now we just do it with diagrams and so on, and we do this over and over again. And a lot of us are pretty good at doing that, you know, getting some idea of what a space will hold and so on. But again, it's not, the trick is, you know, I'm very sympathetic to, you know, what Tahira said is, you know, obviously it's still much better ultimately with current tech to see the space. But that's why I was thinking that if we can use VR or AR to augment, to provide that experience to a remote team who can then say, okay, but I want you to, you know, I want to look a little, you know, can you turn this way? Because I didn't really see what that part of the room looked like. And maybe it's going to be, you know, too dark over there unless we do this and that and so forth. That's I think a really nice way of leveraging technology to save time and money. So we have a question. That's right. And Tahira is pointing out, yeah, the people who do this all the time, we can do this, but our clients certainly really appreciate saying, oh, wow, yeah, that looks really great. Right. Yeah, do that.
Or we can put that many tables in here, but let me show you how tight that is going to feel. It's going to be, yeah, you know, it might look okay on paper, but let me show you how, you know, you're going to back up from this chair and like bump into the chair behind you because it's too tight. It looks good on paper, but once you pull those chairs out from the table and everybody's sitting down, it doesn't quite work. So yeah, what's the question?
Yeah. So Sue has a question here. Let's see.
Oh, I would love this. She's asking different uses of AR, like pop-ups pointing to outlets or whatever. Like, I would love that. Again, I can't wait till I for one welcome my robot glasses because yeah, you think about some of these larger convention centers. I would also love on the trade show floor to be able to say, you know, look down at my app and say, okay, I want to go to booth 519, and then bloop, it pops up in my glasses and says, okay, you want to go down this aisle and then down that. It's almost like navigating on, on Google Maps, right? Where, okay, it's really busy in aisle 317. So you might want to go down and take one more and go down, aisle 318. And, or, you're sitting in you think about these hosted buyer meetings where these planners are, running from one side of the trade show floor to the other side because they have a appointment every 15 minutes, a little pop-up reminding you saying you've got another appointment in 15 minutes and it's on the other side of the floor. So really, yeah. Exactly. Just like Google Maps, right? It's going to take you 7 minutes to get there, And so, yeah, having things like that or being able to bring an overlay and say, okay, show me where all the outlets are, being able to leverage these, I can't wait for the augmented reality in that sense of being able to just bring it up and, show me where all the rigging points are, and it points, and it points it all out with some kind of pop-up. And where, I think we're going to see all of this in our lifetime. It's not that far out.
I want to welcome Chris.
Okay, good. Sorry I'm late.
Yes, we can.
My post-con was rescheduled and then went much longer than I was expecting. So they will do that. Yeah. Business is good. Business, as you can see, I'm working from the home office today. I've been on the road for about 3 months, and so my boss was kind enough to let me work from home the rest of this week.
Right.
So.
Right. So I'm not sure that everyone knows you. Chris, do you want to just very briefly describe what you do? And I should extend the same courtesy to Brandt.
My name is Christopher DeArmond. I'm the managing director of Freedom Event Services. We're a Los Angeles-based production company specializing in what we like to call disruptive event technology. Basically, you come to us with your crazy ideas, and we'll find a way to make it happen. Been in this business about 23 years now, and I've seen just about everything you can see. Worked for the in-house companies, worked for outside production companies, worked for floral companies. So I've worked in multiple departments, multiple areas, and also worked for a hotel banquet staff for 5 years. So I've got some very interesting insight into this business for sure. Brandt?
Well, I think I know most everybody here, but this is recorded. So just in case this gets watched by...
Well, there's a number of anonymous viewers, so
all right.
Yeah, tell them who you are.
Hi, I'm Brandt. So I used to work for an meeting and event production company for about 18 years. About 2 years ago, I went on my own, and now I'm concentrating on doing freelance technical and meeting production combined with consulting with meeting production in two directions. So I actually work with planners to connect them with the right technology, as well as working with technology companies that are seeking to pitch to planners. So I can speak geek, I can speak planner, and I enjoy being the translator between the two. And I definitely keep doing the freelance so I can keep my hands dirty and keep out there on site.
Brandt, you definitely provide a valuable service, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Christopher, I mentioned that you've, I think people would be interested in just hearing a little bit about your experience with the LED walls that you've been using recently. And maybe you could just describe that. I think people will find that of interest.
Late last year purchased a Row Visuals, it's called Black Pearl 3.9 mil system. It's a 3.9 millimeter pitch between the pixels, which means it is 1080p high def. The system is all magnetic with ratchet handles on it, so it actually goes up. You end up saving about 35 to 40% of your labor cost to put up a traditional LED wall. It does go up extremely fast, and it's very easy to put together and to map and to make it look amazing. We just recently deployed it for MPI Southern California chapter for their installation dinner, and it was a 9-foot by 30-foot wall with custom content built into it, and it was... People were pretty blown away by it. Once you get about 8 feet off, it looks like a television. It looks just like a monitor of any type. You really can't tell that it's an LED product. There's amazing contrast, amazing colors to it. We can really put some wicked content across it to make it look really, 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 really cool. And it's fairly cost effective. It really, in regards to projection, it's about the same cost for the large projection systems, and the power requirements are significantly lower for the wall. Actually, that entire wall took 79 amps, which, to do a wall of that size, if you were in projection for a 30-foot, multi-projector blend, you're looking at a whole lot more power than that. So right off the bat, you're going to save in power costs, and you're certainly going to save in labor. But like I said, I had 2 guys put that entire wall up in about 3.5 hours and had it mapped and ready to go. So, which is significant. And that's also, you know, it's going to help you with your rehearsal times and how much time you need to be at the hotel and everything else.
Yeah. And no projectors to rig and
nothing to adjust, nothing. I don't need special personnel. I literally 1 video engineer and 1 hand to assist and put them up. I don't need a projectionist and a blend guy and rigging crews, and you know, it's you're looking at a standard, you know, for a size we did, you're looking at 8 people, and you know, we did it with 3. So
I do recommend keeping an LED tech on hand too. Yes. So even if it's set it and forget it, because, and I've seen this happen a few times, once you start getting content on those walls, you'd be surprised how often it's a little too bright.
Sure.
And so being able to either look at your content and say, you know what, all of it is too bright, so we need to take the whole wall down a notch on brightness, or looking at your individual content and saying, okay, only this one that's really super orange, you know, needs to be knocked down. Maybe we can edit that content.
And I completely agree with that. The nice thing about the row system is the interface is super, super simple. So we've actually been able to task our video engineer who's on site already running either the graphic switch or whatever to also manage the wall as well. That's the nice thing about the system. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of production companies, if you talk to them nice enough, you know, if you've got the right system in place, you know, your V1 could handle a lot of that. But absolutely, you know, some of these walls you're going to want a dedicated LED technician on site just to sort of keep an eye on things. And should you, God forbid, you need a repair or something stops working, it is good to always have a second person on. And you know, you're already cutting back 5 guys. You can add 1 more and then have 4 instead of 8 for the show. So.
And you do. There are pixels that go out from time to time, and you have to replace, you know, the little 4-inch squares depending on the system that you've got. And so, yeah, I think it's like you say, you're cutting five guys. You probably can afford to keep 1 on.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, this last show we actually had a power surge that fried 5 of our tiles.
Oh man.
There was a bad power installation, and it jumped the phase basically on the power. And but we were able to do repairs right there in the field, and we got all 5 of them recovered. So that's the great thing about LED is you can literally repair it. All the pieces are interchangeable, and instead of on a projector, your projector goes down, and you need a whole new projector. You know, it's
or something falls down, and you get a tear in your screen. You have to replace the whole screen.
Yes.
You don't have to.
Oh yeah, and we've seen that too. You put up those ultra wide screens, the next thing you know, something rips or something's dirty, or you know, God forbid, Banquets dumps a tray of wine on it. I've had that happen before.
So you're a convert. Yes, apparently. Okay, well that's good to know. I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. And how quickly is this kind of technology coming in?
Rapid. I mean, rapid. The costs on the technology are dropping exponentially right now. It's definitely getting cheaper and cheaper to get into it. What we're facing right now is the market's flooding with product. So it's just the same thing we saw once, you know, 20 and 30,000 lumen projectors really started becoming cost effective. They were all over the place. And so, you know, it was no longer about what widget you were selling. It was about the service you were providing behind it. And so we're starting to see the same thing. We're starting to see a lot of LED product hitting the market, and meeting planners are starting to get much more savvy towards it and what it's capable of, and how easy it is to get it out there and what the true cost of it is. So I think it's pushing the market to do what it needs to do, which is what else can you add behind it? It's not just, you know, what equipment can I deploy, but, you know, how much can I deploy, you know, how much can I design the content to go with it? And, you know, what are our capabilities to do that? And how quickly can we turn it around? And, you know, so it definitely pushes us to all do better. And it pushes us to offer more services and really kind of look at what our clients actually need versus just, hey, look at this really cool new thing I just bought. Don't you want it? You know, it's kind of like hybrid technology. I mean, when hybrids first came out, I mean, goodness, they were prohibitively expensive, and now they're everywhere. It's kind of the same thing. No, we certainly do. I will not argue with that at all.
I want to just check in about the A side of AV. We've kind of been concentrating more on the V side. But what about audio these days? I mean, audio seems, you know, it's been around. It's kind of oldest technology we've had. we have in events in some ways. Well, I guess lighting has been around for a long time, but in terms of change, are things, what's happening with audio?
My kids are home today too. So. Hi, sweetheart. Thank you, baby.
Right. I have grandkids.
Well, unfortunately, my wife is home too, but she's ill at the same time. So, yeah. Brandt, I'll go ahead and let you run with the audio first. I've got some experience in it and my own viewpoints on it, but I'd love to hear what you have to say about it for sure.
Well, the base technology hasn't changed a whole lot. You're seeing more automation in the mixer boards and being able to, have a little bit more computer control and things like that. But the fundamentals of audio are still basically the same as they were 50 years ago. It's not a lot has changed in that direction. Speakers are getting a little bit better at being able to do, more of those kind of line array type speaker systems where you're, aiming the speakers at different parts of the audience. Those have come down in price a lot and are starting to become much more affordable. We're seeing some nice little add-ons to the mixer boards where you can just do onboard recording, shove a USB stick on the side and it immediately just, records everything to that stick so that you're not having to bring in extra equipment. So some boards are starting to include internet streaming capabilities. So it's more just like the base technology and then maybe adding on a little perk or bonus technology, depending on what your particular need is, which is why honestly in my classes I emphasize the fundamentals because it hasn't changed much in the last 50 years. And before I throw it back to you, Chris, I just want to emphasize something that I try and say as often as I can. I get asked a lot, what's my best spend for audio, visual, and technology? And I always say start with audio. Never skimp on audio. Always start with audio. Make sure the audio system is sound. Pardon the pun, it's doing exactly what you need it to do. I just realized, one second here. I thought I sounded awfully echoey. I was coming through my own speakers. The sound is the most important thing. Ultimately, almost every meeting comes down to communication. We're trying to communicate a brand, communicate ideas, communicate where our company is going. And you can't do that with bad audio. There's been plenty of scientific studies that show if you're struggling to hear what a person is saying and you're having to strain to hear what they're saying and you have to do that all day because somebody has an 8-hour general session scheduled, it is absolutely the best spend to make sure that your message is coming across.
I completely agree. And that's also one of the reasons I tell clients as much as possible, no, you can't use a handheld. Because, how many times in the middle of the show, as much as you've talked to them about it, the next thing you know, their handheld is pointing at their belly button. Yeah, exactly. We've seen that time and time and time again.
Yes, I think it's a great setup that we've got going on here, I think.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Then everyone's turning around and looking at you in front of house or your audio engineer, and you're just, not much.
Yeah, you can only turn it up so far before it starts to feed back.
Exactly.
Tahira's pointing out, Tahira's agreeing with us that the best spend is audio, and then she's saying lighting is next, because yes, you want to hear first and then see. I think I agree with that order. That step one is hear, step two is make sure you can see, and I'll throw in the extra level of that if you're sending it out, broadcasting to the internet because it's a hybrid event or something like that, even though you don't need it for the in-room, you should seriously consider adding lighting for the outside events, because anytime cameras are involved, and I'm sure you'd agree, Chris, anytime cameras are involved, cameras love light. That's why you walk into a television studio and it is brighter than the sun. So it might look fine for in the room, but add that extra little bit of lighting anytime it's being recorded professionally because you're planning on releasing it, or you're going to be sending it out onto the internet.
No, I completely agree, and I think there's still a disconnect that clients don't quite understand what is required for, when you're going to record a session, what you're actually going to need beyond just audio. They don't really understand that you're going to need things like a backline light, that or what we call hair light, that light helps to, define the actual profile of the person or the silhouette so that they don't look like they're blending into the background. And so you actually have a sort of a 3D effect. And as well, to make sure that the lighting is done properly so that the presenter is not being blinded the entire time because the lighting angles are wrong, or, they weren't hung properly, or they're too bright. This last year we just had, I mean, we literally had, you know, a ton of front light, and then my LED wall was behind the speakers, and we toned that thing down to 25% intensity for the camera wash. Luckily, you know, it worked very well for the room, but those are things that need to be balanced together, you know, and if it wasn't for those teams talking to each other, you know, and we were recording, and it was ISO recording, there was live camera, you know, and that's a hard thing to do. The third thing is to make sure is that light is continuous all the way across. You know, I know plenty of clients ask, you know, well, why do I have to spend, you know, $15,000, $20,000, $35,000 in lighting? And it's like, well, if you want to see the person as they're walking back and forth across the stage, you need this much to make sure that you're going to see them. You know, my favorite is when you have a fashion show and you design the lights per the runway, and then you show up and the runway is twice as long as what was on your designs that you were originally given. And you're like, oh, okay. Somebody got some flashlights, you know, especially when you got a rig in the air, and that can definitely make things challenging.
I just want to go back to an audio issue. I mean, I had this today. I just got an email from a client. I'm doing some small sessions with maybe about 50 people next month in Texas, and the client said, well, you know, you've got 50 people in the room. Do you really need any audio there? It's like, and I'm about to say, yeah, I do. You know, and we all know people who can fill a room of hundreds of people with their natural speaking voice. I am not one of them. But also I'm working with people, and this goes to something that Sue just said about lighting and production for participatory events, where, yeah, it isn't just the speaker on the stage, but you're going to have people in the audience. There may be people coming up, maybe people moving around. How do we do audio for that?
Well, I mean,
and you have to plan for it. That's right, go ahead, Chris.
No, I'm sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to say that there's, you know, a number of options that are available nowadays. There's things like Catchbox. You know, Catchbox are great for audience purchase. It's a little phone box that you can put a microphone inside and literally chuck it out in the audience, and people can pass that around, you know, and then it's great because number one, it gets audience members to participate, but two, you're not having people running around trying to get somebody a microphone. You know, take that box, chuck it to the next guy, and people love it. People get a kick out of that. It's a lot of fun.
And crowd mics that was just on earlier, you know,
mic,
same idea. So that right. Solves it from an audio standpoint, and then from the lighting standpoint, you have to plan ahead. You know, you have to know that you're going to need lighting around the room. You're going to need multiple camera angles if it's going to be something that's going to be going out. So if it is something that's going to be either broadcast or recorded for posterity or released, you need to be able to have those opposing camera angles, not just one in the back of the room, but one in the front of the room. Maybe someone, you know, with a handheld running around, and really making sure that you can get in there and cover all of those directions. You know, the number of times that we see someone trying to take an IMAX shot of someone standing in the audience to be recognized, and there's no light out there, you know, it just doesn't work. So if you know that that's the way your event is going to go, then you need to plan accordingly.
Oh, I completely agreed. I mean, it's something as simple as, you know, some 6-channel LED light, you know, audience blinders, you know, that can just wash the audience. I mean, you know, you don't need a lot. You know, I mean, granted, when we're doing like Hollywood award shows, everything's mapped out ahead of time. You know, everybody knows where everyone's at, and you've got cameras in multiple angles, and all that stuff's been pre-sighted ahead of time, which is great. But, you know, you're correct. When you're at a standard conference doing something where somebody's going to stand up, you can't exactly have a spotlight in the front of the room. It's got to whip around and pick someone up. You know,
well, except maybe you can these days. I mean, maybe not spotlights yet, but I'm just looking now for something that I saw. Here it is. It's called the Swivel, SWIVL. Do you know about those? They're little robot platforms that you stick currently an iPad on, and you have a microphone / remote that you hang around your neck, and if you move, as you move around, the robot, it's basically a robot camera that basically adjusts itself so that the camera device is pointing at you. So I'm wondering whether it might be possible to do that with lighting eventually, as well. You know, as this device does it for video. And I'm thinking of getting one of those. Have any of you seen these things? They're really very, very impressive.
They've been experimenting with that type of stuff for years now, using radio tags and other things.
Yeah.
The closest that I've seen that actually works is still kind of a stopgap, which is, I believe, PRG invested in a system of basically remote controlled spotlights. So the person is still down. The person you can put down on the deck, but then you can mount the spotlight, which is on a robotic, swivel up in there. And so the person basically is looking at through a camera view of what the spotlight is seeing, with a little target and everything. So you don't have to have that spotlight operator up in the rigging at the back of the room. So it's much more lightweight. And then the person is down on the floor running it remotely, and it's got all the same controls of iris and all that kind of stuff on it. I think we'll get to that point where we can do it. Oh, we lost Adrian. I'm sure he'll bounce back in. Sure. I think we'll get to that point where we have remote control, or where we have fully, automated lighting systems that will be able to track a person. But I haven't seen it implemented effectively yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we had the Sony robotics, which have been doing well for years, but again, that's going to take someone to track that and to move it and adjust it. I'd love to see, with the new beacons that are coming out, beacons would be a great example. Anything like that. If you could coordinate beacons with things like crowd mics, and then have that integrate into a lighting and video system where, as that person hits their crowd mic, that beacon alerts the system to then focus on that person for IMAG and lighting. I mean, I think that, it's the wave of the future. I mean, think about it. We could walk around a ballroom right now with an iPad and tune, our audio console, and it's getting very close to the same thing with lighting. You can walk around and, start to get into some of the very high-end lighting consoles and write cues walking around the room with an iPad. So, I mean, how much longer is it just going to be before these technologies all finally mesh, together? And to here, I have to agree. I mean, there's a difference between being an order taker, on a punch card, and designing a room. And I think that's the difference between, AV and production. I think that the real key there is making sure that clients understand what it is that they're getting. And, it's going to cost a little bit more to effectively design a room appropriately to your meeting or to your conference, which is not necessarily negative, but I think some of that also falls back on us as the production companies to educate our clients as to the full cost of everything and have those costs up front. We just had a chance to bid on a very large show in Orlando because the incumbent was just spending the client's money left and right without really telling the client what was happening. And then at the end of the show, handed the client a bill that was almost double what was actually quoted to them because there was not effective communication. Yes, I mean, designing a room, absolutely. I mean, we should all be doing that. But I think, again, it's, when a client calls you up and says, hey, I've got $35,000, but I need a $125,000 show, we're going to look at you and go, I'm sorry. This is what I can do for that amount of money, but that's it, and I'll do the best I can with what you got, but you also have to temper your expectations with that budget.
Well, sometimes you don't even, I mean, at least you're having the discussion. Sometimes the client has no idea.
Correct. And you're hoping that you get into that discussion with the client early enough, in the process so that you guys have canned that conversation. That would be the ultimate hope, is that you're not getting the phone call 4 weeks before the conference when everything's already been decided and budgets have been written, and and you've got some senior vice president that saw something really cool at some big national convention and wants to implement that now for his company and has no idea how much that thing costs, but he has to have it. And that's been the bane of our existence for, God, I think since the first overhead projector was turned on, really.
While Steve Jobs was still alive, every CEO wanted to be Steve Jobs.
Yes.
And what they didn't ever want to do, though, is to put in the time that they would put in for those keynotes. I mean, they would rehearse for a week leading up. Like, all of senior management would be rehearsing for a week before they would go and do those keynotes. And, how many CEOs do you know that are willing to put that, we're lucky if we get them for an hour the day before, maybe. Yeah. But more likely at 7 o'clock in the morning on their way to breakfast. So they want to look like Steve Jobs, but they didn't want to put the time in to have the rehearsals and to have the to make sure that everything was running like clockwork.
So what proportion of CEOs really get that and are,
virtually zero.
I'm just interested
virtually
in your
zero. I mean, there's a few that I think are good enough and they understand enough rehearsal to come in the day before. There's some that are good enough that they don't need it. To be perfectly honest, they're just natural born speakers, no presentation, roll in and captivate an audience for an hour and a half.
They're camera ready all the time.
Yeah, I know plenty of those guys as well. And to have that level is great. But the ones that want to be Steve Jobs without putting in the time and the effort, and I don't think you can undervalue undervalue the benefits of rehearsal too. That's something that often gets forgotten in AV world is how important it is and how many times the mistakes and problems and goof ups that occur could have been avoided by just coming into the room the day before, walking the stage, finding out where the lights end, finding out where the feedback starts because you walked in front of a speaker, right. Just feeling the room. So many of those things could be avoided by just an ounce of rehearsal time leading up to the event.
Yeah,
I think that's a fantastic. Any of the anonymous folks who are watching this, that's in some ways one of the best tips that you'll ever get. I think.
The other tip I have is show up to your rehearsrsal time.
Well, that would help. Yes.
I got busy. Cocktail reception. I couldn't big meeting.
I think I really needed it. It wasn't that.
Laura dropped a question in there that was scrolled by, and I just want to make sure we don't get too deep before it goes off. So Laura dropped one in and said that Chris brought up a good point. Do event technologies need more integration? Yes, but good luck, Charlie.
Yeah.
Yes, it'd be great if all of these things talk to each other, but everybody wants their own little walled garden. I mean, think about home automation, what a mess that is right now. You got 8 different competing platforms. Nobody wants to, step up and come up with a unified, way of talking to each other between the devices. So yeah, I mean, I think there are some smart technology companies that are, I can think of a couple off the top of my head that are like, hey, we'll work with anybody. We'll open up our APIs and anybody that wants to use our backend, we'll do as much or as little as you want to. Right. And then there are technologies that are like, nope, it's us. And if we need that part, we'll buy it. Sure. So, if we need, to add on a registration to our app, then we'll buy a registration company, rather than actually playing nice with someone else's.
Right.
So yes, we need it, but good luck. We're not going to get it. Sorry.
It's kind of like the unified theory of relativity. I mean, everybody wants to find it, but nobody can actually put it together, and there's a lot of different things. We've seen the same thing. It's, we look at it from, it's not just a perspective of making sure the technology talks together, but then it's also this stupid stuff like, well, if you're in the middle of a session and something went wrong and you didn't pay for an in-room tech, how do you get help? Those are kind of some of the things we're looking at as well, but yeah, unifying the technology would be fantastic. We've actually been trying to find any way at all that we could have a central hub location to monitor breakout rooms, especially at a large convention, where you may not have, where you've got 30, 40, 50, 60 breakouts just for some of these convention center halls, where you have 3 or 4 floating techs because the client couldn't afford to put bodies in every single room. Well, we're trying to find a way that you could centrally manage those rooms from one location, or at least multiple rooms from a location.
You need a panic button.
You do, exactly. And that's
it's like an Amazon Dash button that you can just put on the podium next to the thing that you just hit it. And it lights up a signal on somebody's
honest phone. To God, that's actually an app we're in development in right now. Is the AV help button. It's a fairly large project we're actually working on right now, which would be an app that presenters and room monitors could download, and it would actually have a big fat help button on there among many, 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 many other options.
I think you need a physical button, because if I have to take my phone out because I've turned off my phone because I'm speaking, so I think you need literally a physical button that you can smack.
I've thought about it too. Just it could be Bluetooth capable. It's all got a Bluetooth or wireless.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Amazon Dash.
I'd love to just build a little box. You just put it right on top. One says banquets, one says AV, and one says security. You got 3 right across the top.
So I just want to go back. We've got a number of themes that have come up in the chat. Tahir wrote to Glenn Thayer, who's joined us, who's an MC and a meeting moderator, about asking about his ideas about integration. And Glenn asked about app companies working with production to integrate the audience response system options into the general sessions. I certainly have had a number of ARS folks who have tried very hard to work with me when I've been doing event moderation or event facilitation to do that. And sometimes they're a little pushy, Glenn. I don't know if you found that sometimes, like, yeah, we have this amazing feature, and you've got this session coming up, and we'd love to figure out a way, you could use that, which would show off our product very well. They don't say that, but and so on. So Glenn, feel free to talk about that with chat.
Yeah, I think we have an open seat. Looks like we lost
and so on.
Brandt for a minute. I'm sure he'll be back in, but yeah.
Yeah, Brandt,
you lost me Glenn, we certainly have an open seat.
I got back.
We could add you to the chat. Yeah, to hear, you're putting up some really great, some really funny points here, but some absolutely great points here. It's funny with the Marriott Redcoat app. I have a friend actually works at a Marriott up in Oregon. He's actually a director of audiovisual at a major hotel, and we talked about the Redcoat app. And the issue that I have with something like the Redcoat app is that goes to a meeting concierge person. That person still has to pick up the phone or the radio and call a different department and get somebody on the line to respond to the room. Yes, you are a bit cheeky, but I like that though. That's good. I mean, cheeky is good, especially cheeky and production guys goes together pretty well. I'm not going to lie. But what we're working on right now with the AV app especially is it's going to go direct to the person you need to talk to. If you hit the AV help button, it's going direct to audiovisual. It's not going to a meeting concierge who then has to try and get AV on the radio or get the appropriate person to channel it out from there. We're working on something that's directly going to connect with those different departments on site, and hopefully including the hotels if the hotels are willing to adapt it, where you could call for a room fresh from your phone. You could call for electrical issues or AC issues or, and God forbid, security issues, but that's something we're really looking at, is that how do you get a hold of hotel security when there is a major situation that's developed, and you need to start taking care of people or find out where things are at. I mean, how great would it be if there was, God forbid, an active shooter on site and you had to lock down your property? Well, as soon as you lock down the room, if you've got people in those rooms that can say, I'm locked down in Salon C, I'm locked down over here, I'm locked down. You don't hear from anybody in this other room, there's an issue and you need to have first responders head to that direction. So, and those are the kind of things we're looking at, which is weird for a production company, but that's the kind of stuff we're looking at for sure.
One of the other things...
anything.
So I was just going to kind of go...
Go ahead, Clay. I was just going to say that anything that's... let me just comment on Chris, sure. And then I'll pass things over to you. I was just going to say that any system that would improve the lack of any kind of system that exists at the moment, when there is a need in a session room, and there is no. I mean, I've been in that situation. I'm sure you have too, Glenn, where something goes wrong in the room. There's no tech there. I have no way of getting a tech. I mean, I have a phone number, a cell phone number, of the show producer or something like that, or and I call that number and they're busy and so on. Anything's got to be better than that. Even if there aren't 45 techs and you need 45 techs at one point in the show, at least there'll be if you have a system, there could be a queue, right? And it's like, okay, we have a problem in 30 rooms, so and here are the problems, and I'm going to prioritize them and send people out. That would be so much better than what we currently have.
So this is one of the things. Of course, Brandt disappeared on us.
Back.
Oh, is he back now?
Yeah, he just popped in.
Here he is. He's back. I'm getting.
This is one of the big things that we're looking at, and this is what I was mentioning is really being able to blend the technology. We have all these great apps that are out there, but what I'm finding is there's a real lack of integration with production. And it comes down, a lot of times I'll speak to the clients and say, hey, can we take the app, use the audience response system that's in the app to be able to put things up on the main screens? Let's fully utilize what we have. And every time it comes back to, it's going to take too much time. was like, well, didn't you just invest how many tens of thousands of dollars into this app to make the conference better for your attendees, yet you don't want to do the production? And what I have found over the last couple of years is it's been a big issue of bringing production in early enough to be able to say, hey, this is really simple. Get production with the app company and have them marry it together and find out what's needed. Brandt, do you have anything else to say on it? What would make that easier?
Yeah, I'm glad that I got to come back for that because I definitely judge apps and polling systems that don't have proper ways to display. And maybe that's because I'm coming from the production side. But yeah, like you say, you're investing your time, you're investing your effort, you're investing your attendees' time and effort into these things. And just the ability to display the results of a poll without having a scroll bar and Chrome tabs across the top, having a nice way to display that data, I think is an important part. It's definitely, you need to have the conversation with your production team to say, hey, we're having this as part of our meeting. We're going to be having ARS. What do we need to do about that? Because there's about 8 different ways that you can handle it. So that's one is to display on the screen. If you're using Q&A, it's great if you've got a crowd mics or something like that, or a catch box. But sometimes you want old school, I want to text it in, be anonymous Q&A, and that can be the source of a great discussion. How do we get that information to our speakers then? So a lot of times what we'll do, and this again depends, this is where I start to judge the app companies, is how do you route that? How do you moderate it? Do you use some kind of a downstage monitor where you can feed the questions to a downstage monitor? I've had some people use the in-ear so that we could actually read them questions. The downstage monitor actually works really well, and people sometimes think that they're using an in-ear when it actually is just being shown down below. We've done that kind of kludgy by actually just running PowerPoint down there and typing the questions, cutting and pasting the questions into a PowerPoint and then displaying it down in that box, or sometimes actually running the app's output down to that feed and being able to adjust it, which depends on the app company and whether or not they've thought about how it displays.
Well, I know that there was
kind of answer the question.
Kind of. I mean, what I've done in the past personally is used. I've used Conference.io. I've used their platform because that's just obviously it's a web app and it can integrate with many other platforms. And I use it on my iPad. And we have a moderator sitting offside that'll moderate all the questions. That way I don't have to think about it. I can just look and say, hey, what's going on right now? What's the top question I'm going to ask? Move along. Otherwise, use the DSMs, use the downstage monitors. I like that idea. Chris, any ideas that you've got?
Well, actually, I was just going to bring up Conference.io as well. And the great thing about that is I want to say it's the same app. I can't remember exactly, but I believe it's in Conference.io where the attendees can actually upvote a question.
Yes, that is one of them.
That's exactly the one I'm thinking of. So yeah, you can upvote and downvote the questions so that, especially if you're doing like a corporate sales meeting or, an all hands meeting, they can definitely kind of say, hey, this is to your senior management, what, is definitely pressing. I think the hardest part with app development, especially when you have, there's kind of been a ask questions sort of thing that's supposed to come back at general session and people can ask questions throughout the conference, but I've never really seen anybody effectively spend the money or the time for the personnel to moderate that and to start aggregating all this stuff to make sure that those questions are going to get answered.
And that's another piece that you bring up right there is most people don't have somebody, most clients don't have somebody dedicated that's part of their team, their content team or education team to moderate it to make sure it goes the way it's supposed to go. So we're there on site. Every time I have used this, I've had to train somebody 30 minutes before showtime on how to do it. And that's not the way to...
It's not the way to make it work for sure. But it's just, I think it kind of trends back as well to social media management. I mean, hashtags were all the rage on certain shows for a long time because it was a great way to market and get out. But then they were finding that people were abusing the hashtags and so on and so forth. And then the question was, well, how do we moderate this? What do we do? And I'm like, you hire somebody, It's as simple as that. I mean, one of the things when I was, as I tell people about social media, the greatest thing about a hashtag, if you get interns to sit there and monitor your hashtag, because you're going to have people that are inside the room tweeting about your show using your hashtag. And if there's an issue in the room, you're going to find out right off the bat through social media, instead of, I've seen it where one room basically just technology-wise and imploded on itself, and nobody was monitoring the Twitter feed, and it turned out to be this huge running gag because everybody in the room was complaining about the room, and nobody on the actual conference management was moderating anything. So I think we have a lot of these tools that we can integrate together, but then I don't think people really understand what it takes on the back end to make these tools effective. You know,
and the people part of that. Glenn, I think the first time I met you in Colorado, we had a discussion about, you were talking about your need to have a handler, and that seems to be a very similar kind of issue really here. There's this person who provides this integration piece between what's happening on stage and production and the audience and so on. You need at least one person, maybe more than one person, but you've got to have those people. You've got to fill in that gap. Otherwise, snafus are going to occur, and also the experience won't be won't appear smooth and consistent. You want, when something's happening at an event, the audience is doing something or feeling something, you want, and everyone needs to know about that. Production needs to know about it. The folks on stage need to know about it, and so on, so that they can respond appropriately. And often we don't have those people.
How do we get that? I think that's the big question. How do all of us as production and meeting professionals get the meeting owner or planner, whoever's responsible for that, to be able to step in and understand what's needed to have a flawless event or provide more value?
Well, I think with our experience, what we've definitely had to do is retrain the client, and unfortunately, I think a lot of it, the onus kind of comes back on CMP schools and designations and everything else, is that audiovisual and production is very low on on their checklist. And they don't think to bring us in early in the game to make sure that everything they're planning is going to cooperate together, or that maybe we have, a solution to an answer that they have. So instead of having 2 vendors, they end up with 7 vendors who can't talk to each other. They don't think to bring us into early meetings with the hotel to start talking about, the hotel says, oh yeah, you can fit, 100 tables in here at 10 tops for 1,000 people for your session. And then the client says, oh yeah, and then we plan all this AV, and then we all meet in the middle and go, this isn't all going to fit.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is just, we have to, as us, we have to stop relying on other people kind of, instead of going, well, how do we do this? I think we just have to go out and just preach it. And we have to train these people, and we have to make it as every time you talk to a client, say, get me in. I want to get in early. Your show's in September. I want to talk in January. And that was in the 90s. I mean, in the 90s, we were working 6, 9, 8, 12 months out. Now we're working 6 weeks out if we're lucky at some shows. And I think that we just need to retrain and re-educate people to come back to that standard to where we used to be before. Because you have a lot of these younger folks that are coming in and joining the industry that don't have that experience from the way things used to be, or the way things were before, or how the industry really has changed over the last 25 years. And so they're coming in, and then we're having to, we just have to remember, we have to retrain these folks all the time. It's like a revolving door. You just constantly have to make sure that they're aware of how things need to happen and how they have to go forward. Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you that's wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. My kids made me a special drink. It's got a chocolate wrapper and I don't know what else is in it, but
that's not the special drink my kids make me.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm kidding.
Another lesson, treat your production folks.
You know what, Sue? That's actually a great question. I will agree that younger people get the importance of AV and production, but we're in a world of instant gratification now, and we're in a world where attention spans they literally tell you, if you don't have someone's attention in 15 seconds or less, they've completely missed the message. So as technology has seemingly gotten easier and more integrated, they just assume that they can call 3 weeks ahead of time and that it's just going to happen, because they can go to the iPhone store and pick up an iPhone and turn it on and be broadcasting in 30 seconds.
Doesn't that also
yes,
doesn't that also piggyback on the fact that I think the younger planners and people that are involved are looking for more glitz and glam. It's kind of like the big experience of overwhelming AV. It's more about, like if you want to compare it to movies, it's like a Michael Bay movie, like the Transformers. It's like, we just need more explosions and better CG.
You're welcome.
You know, it's not about the content. And we're all looking at it. It's about the content and marrying that content with the experience.
Correct. No, I agree completely. And it's how many times have they wanted the experience without really knowing what the experience needs to be? You know, I mean, if you want, one of the first questions we always ask clients right off the bat is, why are you having the meeting? Don't tell me what you want to do. I don't want to know what you want to do. I don't know how flashy you want it to be. Why are you having the meeting? And let's design everything else around why you're having the meeting. You know, are you selling something? Are you going back over financial data for the year? Are you celebrating the year's success? Are you trying to impress upon some new technology or some new educational point? You know, why are we here? Let's talk about that first, and then design everything from the ground up to that perspective. And it makes a big difference when clients are willing to run down that path. We have very successful meetings because everything's been tailored, and then it also gets them thinking about the same thing. You know, if I need a team building exercise, well, you know, what's going to be an effective team building exercise for who's going to be here versus what did I read, you know, the last time online? Oh, that looked really cool online. I want that. And again, we come back to the senior vice president experience, you know.
I think that goes to kind of answer your original question, Glenn, is how do we start working with these people, you know, to get the integrations, to get, you know, the everybody on the same page. And that's asking questions and continuing to ask questions and ask more questions. And, oh, we're going to have ARS. Great. How is that going to work exactly in your mind? You know, is the person going to be up there answering questions? You know, how are we going to feed that? You know, well, okay, then we're going to need a DSM. I mean, so asking those questions and asking more questions and more questions and more questions, I think really is the key to making sure that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
No, agreed.
Right. I think that's true. Yeah. Yeah, and the ARS, I just want to say that ARS is audience response systems are places that I think have a lot of work still to do. And you're right, clients really do underestimate the amount of work necessary to make that stuff work smoothly and have an ARS that actually can deal with the
one more sneaky trick when you're using the downstage monitor trick. Yeah. And you can give them like 2 or 3 questions at a time, but always have a code phrase for I don't like any of those questions. And this is again where you can make people think they've got an in-ear or something like that. So if they look down and they don't like any of those questions, what we usually do is say, okay, we're getting a lot of great questions in. We want to remind you to text your questions to 62333. So every time they remind the audience that they want more questions is our cue to say he doesn't like any of those questions.
Oh, great.
Right. No, not at all.
That's not what was going on in this chat, by the way.
I think it would be great if you guys would ask more questions. We're getting a lot of good questions, but...
That's awesome. I was glad to be able to jump in at the last minute. I just got back to the office as soon as I found it was going on. I was like, wait, I'm back. Let me jump in.
That was good to have you, Glenn. Absolutely. You brought up some great points for sure.
Sure.
I know.
Good. It's great to have you. It's great to see you again, Glenn. It's been a while since we've seen each other. So that's great. I do want to bring this to close in about 10 minutes.
The only other thing I'd like to add to, Brandt makes a good point. Ask 1,000 questions, but also make it clear to your client that there is no stupid question on their part. The only dumb question is the one they didn't ask. You know, clients, I think, when they're working at that level, they're very cognizant of their public persona and wanting to be viewed as, knowing what they're doing so that people will, have faith in them and what they're doing. But as I tell clients all the time, if you don't know, just ask. I would be more than happy to answer the question for you. And I'm actually booking a meeting with a client in the future. We're going to sit down for 3 hours at their office and go over what a run a show should look like and what a production checklist looks like, so they can understand much greater what we need and how we do things on our end, so they can understand where the failures are coming from just a disorganized, association. So, but come and ask. Don't just assume.
And we as technology people can't assume that you always know what we're talking about.
Correct.
There's a tremendous variety of levels of knowledge in the industry. And just because someone has been, planning for 20 years doesn't mean they know that much about AV. Likewise, just because someone is under 25 doesn't mean they know a lot about AV. And we can't assume what they do and don't know. I was giving a session at WEC, and literally 5 minutes into the session, I said something about VGA, and a woman raised her hand and goes, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! You're already over my head." And so, to a lot of most AV and technical people, that would be like, "Whoa, man!" But that doesn't mean that person is in any way dumb or doesn't know how to do their job, but it hasn't been a priority for them, to learn the AV side of things. And that's again, where we go back to, we do our best to educate the industry and get everybody on the same page.
No, I completely agree. I mean, I could never sit down and make out travel arrangements for 600 people. I'd blow my brains out. I mean, there are things that meeting planners do that I'm just blown away that they had the patience or the wherewithal to sit down and go through just spreadsheet after spreadsheet after spreadsheet and to put all these parts together 100%. So I completely agree with that statement. I mean, I did banquets for 5 years, and I can tell you on banquet service side what I need and what I have to provide to the house, knowing what I needed when I was a server. But that's about where, it ends from there. I couldn't tell you how to plan a meal function for 600 people or how much food I need to buy or anything of that.
It seems like we need to do another event camp, is what it seems like, because it's almost like to hear it brings up a good point. It's probably not generational, but people think good tech. It's like, well, you hire a reputable company, you're going to have great tech. It's all going to go perfect. But what they don't see is how everybody works together as a team and really puts it together, and how all the pieces interact. And it's almost like a pull behind the curtain. And Brandt, you do an awesome job, when you're speaking at WEC and you're really saying, hey, here's how tech works. However, on the other side is they see it and they go, I just want to hire you and have it show up and work, instead of, I have to do more work. I want it to be better. Well, now the onus is on me.
Those two forces are definitely pulling at each other. And we kind of touched on it at the very beginning, that there's a little bit of a backlash coming, I think, from planners with all the tech, that their heads are just done. You know what? I'm done. Too much tech. I can't handle it. I didn't get into this business in order to do that. And so I think there's a tension there of those that do want to learn it and understand, hey, this is going to help me with my budgets. It's, I'm going to be able to get better deals. And then there's another contingent that I think is going to grow of, can I just hire somebody to handle it for me on the very small level? They're not ready for a full-on production company yet. I just need a guy, the stereotypical guy, which obviously aren't all guys, but it's that stereotypical, I just need someone that can handle it for me and get me a couple of AV bids and then be there on site to make sure it works.
Yeah.
Sue is asking what maybe our last question of this evening. She says, what's the best question for a planner to ask you?
I love it when a client looks me in the face and says, what do you need from me? Simple as that, because that opens up the dialogue. I'll tell a client straight out, my job is to make sure you never have to worry about anything that plugs into the wall, period. If it's supposed to light up, turn on, project, make sound, my job is to make sure you never have to worry about any of that. As long as you look at me and say, what do you need from me? And we can work, and it's a collaborative effort, I will make sure you never have to worry about anything that I do.
Yeah, Can't be a much more
exactly. I think on the technology side, the onus is on us to ask the questions. In essence, we're saying we don't need you to ask a question. We need you to tell us what you want, and then we'll work with you to make sure that you get, that we bring that vision to life in a way that's going to be cost effective and an experience and all the wonderful things. So yeah, I don't think there is about the questions that we need to be asked. It's the questions that we need to be asking.
Yeah. And I think that,
Glenn, from your point of view, what do you like people to ask you?
Is them to preface it is, hey, we want to make our experience better for our attendees. Do you have any suggestions that we might be able to incorporate that you've seen on other events? That opens up, that just allows me to experiment and say, okay, can we experiment? And then we just open up, here's everything that I've seen, here's things that I'd like to create, what vibes with the client. And that's really what we're going to find. If they say, I like that idea that we want to make the CEO disappear on stage, well, then I call Brandt and go, Brandt, how the hell do we make a CEO disappear? Aside from getting him food poisoning, that's really it. It's like, let's get creative, because then they're going to be on board with spending the time and energy to do the production that's needed. And
it's a dialogue. When you ask that, when they ask that question of, we want to make our experience better. Okay, well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by make your attendee experience better? What is better for your group? Is it flashier? Right. Is it someone disappearing on stage? Is it that experience, or is it better content? Is it better community? Is it better meeting time? Is it better, socializing time? What is going to make that experience better? And then how do we translate that into the technology?
Yeah.
But maybe the thing you've all of the things that the three of you have said have in common is really, well, if you had to use one word, it would be respect. Or maybe another word is understanding that event professionals can make a world of difference to your event, and they have a lot of experience that is probably extremely useful to you, and all you need to do is to be open to it and ask for it and ask for their opinion. It doesn't mean you're giving up control, but the moment you say to
I think that really what it comes down to is that there's a trust factor that's always sort of been missing. I've met clients that say they only use in-house AV because they had one bad experience with a production company. I have clients that say they only use production companies because they had one bad experience with in-house AV. I think what the industry is kind of missing, that we used to have producers back in the day, which were great. You'd hire a producer, they'd source all your content, they'd build everything for you, they'd source your technology partners and take care of everything from there. That position unfortunately fell to the wayside for a long time, and that's, production companies and smaller boutique companies like the one I work for, we've kind of tried to backfill that gap as much as possible. But now we start to see guys like Brandt coming back along, which is helpful, incredibly helpful, because Brandt's not the production company, he's the bridge in between, and that makes clients feel comfortable again, and they can have conversations with a guy like Brandt and sit down with him and, what am I looking for? What do I really need? And can you find me some quotes? And who should I really work with? Because there's just a severe amount of distrust, and I still trying to figure out how to overcome that. I've been trying for 23 years to figure out how to overcome that, because for a long time, AV's either been the redheaded stepchild of the business that was there because they were a necessity, or the last thing on a planner's mind. Go ahead.
It's partnership too, Chris. I mean, you bring up the big point. There's the trust, but it's really partners. I think forever, most people who serve the industry that are not a meeting planner, they are considered vendors.
Correct.
And
they need to be considered as partners. Yes.
We're supposed to be partners. To be effective, we have to be a partner in the event or the meeting. And I think that's really the way to go. If we can get our clients to say, you are our partner.
Yeah, it drives. The term vendor for me is a 4-letter word. Because really what people seem to forget is that your vendors are actually your partners, because they want to be as successful as possible, because they want you to come back next year. They don't want you to just walk in the door and they're just going to haphazardly go at the show. I mean, everybody from AV to decor to furniture to catering to transportation, everybody out there wants to ensure to do the best possible job they can. So they're going to be the best partner you can have at that moment in time, because we all want you to come back next year. It's as simple as that, I would love to get the word vendor out of the industry as a vernacular. It drives me up the wall because it implies so much negativity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good point. Yeah, thinking maybe that's a place that we can close. Again, I have to go. It's 6 o'clock on the East Coast here. You don't necessarily have to. I'm going to pause the recording myself, but if you folks want to stay and talk some more, please do so. I'm going to leave, but I will pause the recording. But I would just want to thank everyone who's been involved. A whole sort of panorama of event professionals, either on the chat and of course Brandt and Christopher and Glenn on camera. I really appreciate your time, and it's great to see you and hear what you have to say. A lot of really great ideas. So thank you so much for coming, everyone. And
thanks for hosting.
We'll do this again.
All right, thanks. Bye, guys.
You take care. Have a great evening, all of you. Yes, bye.